Good morning. We are going to read from John 12, verses 20 through 26, and you can follow along on the screen. Now, among those who went up to worship at the feast were some Greeks. So these came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and asked him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew. Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. And Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there my servant will be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him." This is the word of the Lord.
I'm going to share a message with you today that very well could change your life. And I say it could very well change your life because what I'm about to share with you is the secret key to happiness. This is a really big deal because everyone wants to know the secret key to happiness, right? You can nod if you want to know the secret key to happiness. Not too long ago, Entrepreneur Magazine published an article called 20 Secrets to Living a Happier Life. Some of these secret steps to happiness involve focusing on the positive, celebrating little victories, finding your work-life balance, which I know is hard for a lot of you, meditating, being creative, doing what you love, spending your money wisely, and most importantly, being yourself. Does that sound familiar at all? I came across another article on a website called Thrive Global. So if you want to flourish and thrive in this life, this website is there for you, and it emphasized the same thing. The title of this article that I found is called, "You Are the Most Important Person in Your Life." You are the most important person in your life. Be unapologetically yourself always. Look at this little excerpt with me. I have it for you so you can read along with me. If you enjoy something, if it feels good and it makes you happy, then who cares what anyone else thinks? Why should you feel guilt or shame about it? Because someone once said that it's not popular enough, deep enough, special enough, or spiritual enough? Don't ever apologize for who you are or what you like. Be unapologetically yourself, always. Be authentic, no matter what anyone else thinks. Even more, do the things that you enjoy more often. The world needs more happy people. Create your own little heaven on earth. Oh, wow, if it only that easy, right? Give yourself a relaxing spa bath. Put your favorite perfume on. Change your hair. Try a new style. Buy some new clothes in a color that you love but never wear. Pamper yourself. Be creative and have fun. Make little luxuries a part of your everyday life. Allow yourself to be you. Express your needs. Enjoy little and big things in life. Fill yourself with a fresh zest of life and recharge yourself so that you are able to live your best life and share it with others. Now, if that does not sum up our culture's vision of the good life, I don't know what else does. These are the secret keys to happiness or the magic ingredients of the good life. But what I want to show you today is that none of that is actually true. Take this statue, for example, which is my wife, so I have to be incredibly careful with it. I've been given strict instructions so that I don't break it. This is maybe a Greek person or Roman, I don't know. But let's just pretend that this represents you, and it represents me. Now, I want you to see that it's empty on the inside. And since it's empty on the inside, it's very sad. And so what we have to do is try to take all of our sadness and our emptiness and fill it up so that we can be happy, right? And so we have all of these ingredients. We go to our entrepreneur magazines, we go to our therapists or your blogs or your websites or just, mainstream media, pop culture in general, and they give us all of these ingredients. And so I have some of these ingredients with me. And I know I'm going to mix metaphors a little bit because I've got a statue that is us, but I'm going to bake a cake in us of the good life, all right? So try to follow me here if you can. The first ingredient, according to everything that I just read to you, if you want to live a happy life, is just a little bit of self-indulgence. Self-indulgence. And so this is the base of everything. This is like going to make some really good cornbread, and I'm just going to pour it all in there. In the words of Tom and Donna, just treat yourself. Go to the spa, buy a new outfit, get a new toy, fancy hairdo. Make the little luxuries a part of your everyday life. Just a little bit of self-indulgence. Then after you have the self-indulgence, which is the base, and want it to stay in there, you just need to add a little bit of self-expression, and that's the sugar. Express yourself. What do you want? What are your dreams? What are your needs? What is your truth? That is a good one. What is your truth? Stop caring about what other people think about you and just do you always, all of the time. And everyone said, oh, that sounds so good. So after a little bit of self-expression, you've got the self-indulgence. Now the chocolate chips. Not vital, but good, helpful. You know, it adds something. You need a little bit of self-care. So you need to make sure that you're healthy mentally, meditate. Make sure that you're healthy physically, go to the gym, ride a bike, go vegan or carnivore, which I tried. Didn't really work. It's another story for another time. But take care of yourself. Make sure your work balance and your play balance is good, and you're not burning yourself out. Self-care is absolutely vital. So important. And then finally, self-indulgence is good. Self-expression is important. Self-care, absolutely. But to top it all off, you need a little bit of self-appreciation. Pat yourself on the back. Celebrate you. You just did an awesome job. You went vegan. You didn't have to. And no one knows why, but pat yourself on the back for that. Well done. Appreciate yourself. Celebrate the wins. And after you do all of that, your life will be totally full. He kind of looks like he has white hair now. I don't know if you can see that. Guys, this is what our culture tells us it takes to live life to the fullest. And what I want to show you today is that our life can be totally full. We can take our empty shell and we can fill it up with all of this good stuff. But if our life is full of us, it will never be life to the fullest. And this is the paradox of the good life. This is what I want to show you today. You can follow all of the advice from all of the gurus. You can take everything that they're trying to shove down your throat and you can swallow it and be like, that tastes good. I love me. But if you do, you will not enter eternal life. Which, if this is your first time here, welcome. Eternal life in the Gospel of John is the Greek word zoe. And zoe means life and life abundantly, or life to the fullest. It is the Greek word for the good life, both now and forevermore. If it's full of yourself, it won't be life to the fullest. Look at verse 25. Jesus says it explicitly. Whoever loves his life loses it. But whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for Zoe. Will keep it for the good life, here and forevermore. That's a paradox. And I'm just calling it the good life paradox. That's the title of this sermon, which I don't even usually give sermons titles, but that's got a great ring to it, so there you go. And I want to unpack this today by doing a few things. First, I want to show you what this paradox means. I want to show you what in the world Jesus is actually saying and why it makes sense. And then second, I want to show you two specific ways that it plays out. And I want to show you two specific ways that happiness and flourishing flow out of this paradox. So are you ready to get after this good life paradox? Can you nod if you're with me? All right, good. Let's do it. First, what in the world is Jesus talking about? What does it mean that if you love your life, you're going to lose it? And what does it mean that if you hate your life, you're going to actually enter into the good life, both now and forevermore? What does that mean? The answer to this question is actually Jesus. And this is what we saw last week. Jesus is the answer to this paradox. His life is not only the explanation, but it is the demonstration of this paradox. Remember, we saw it last week. The way up is down. The way to glory is the cross. The way to life is actually through his death. Jesus is the demonstration of this paradox. Now, if you think that it sounds crazy, you're not alone. You're not alone. I can tell you that the people that were listening to Jesus in that moment, including his disciples, also thought it was crazy. For most of my life, I'll be totally honest with you, I didn't want to give Jesus my life because I thought it was crazy too. How could the way to power be through service? How could the way to glory be through humiliation? How could the way into life to the fullest be giving up my own life? And so I looked at Jesus' claims and I never doubted that they were true. I grew up believing the gospel was true. I grew up believing that Jesus was true. But the whole idea of getting up on a cross and dying to myself was repugnant to me. It didn't seem good at all. And so I ran from it for as long as I could. I thought that hating my life meant imagining the worst possible life ever, and then following Jesus would be living that life. That's what I thought following. So for me, I hate camping. I've confessed this to you before. I love technology. I love science. I love progress. I love electricity. I love running water. I love hot running water on my back when I'm dirty. I love sleeping in beds and soft cushion with blankets and fans and all of this kind of stuff. And so for me, my worst possible life ever was to go to the bush somewhere and be a missionary with none of those things. That's what I thought following Jesus was going to be then. So if I gave Jesus my life, getting up on a cross was going to be going to the bush and being camping basically for the rest of my life. I didn't want to do that. It was the most insane prospect in the entire world. So if you feel that today, you're not alone. You're not alone. If you think this paradox sounds crazy, you are not alone. The disciples were there. I was there too. But then Jesus explains what he means. See, I love Jesus for so many reasons, but he knows that as he's saying this, he knows that the paradox isn't going to make sense to us. He knows that our simple little brains are not going to be able to grasp it. And so he puts it on the lowest shelf possible so that we can reach out and grab it. And he does it by using this illustration of a grain of wheat. Look back at verse 24. He says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." This is really fascinating because a grain of wheat or a seed or whatever you want to picture it in your own mind has all kinds of potential, has all kinds of power hidden inside of it. But unless it dies, that potential will never be realized, and that power will never be released. I love how one author put it. He said, "It possesses a divine secret, a germ of life, which is the very omnipotence of God within it, but it must release that secret germ by being rent asunder, disintegrated, and opening its side, so that the living thing may be released." You see, unless this grain of wheat empties itself of life, life will never come out of it. You following Jesus here? This is bottom shelf stuff. Unless it is buried under the ground, it will remain alone. And so unless it returns to the dirt from which it came, it will never spring back up out of the dirt and produce life for everyone else. There will be no joy of the harvest unless there is a burying of the seed. And this is what we really need to see about this little grain of wheat. And write this down if you're taking notes. Its sacrifice and its reward are the same thing. The sacrifice of the seed and the reward of the seed are the same thing. Its death, which is its sacrifice, is its life, which is its reward. It's only in the process of dying that the little seed is finally realizing its full potential for life. And here's the nuance of the illustration that I love so much. The nuance of this illustration is that it's not just that the grain of wheat loses its life and then finds it again. It's that this little grain of wheat loses its life and then finds it much more abundantly. It multiplies. The power is released. The potential is realized. It doesn't come up the same. It comes up greater. And so, yes, the sacrifice means giving up everything. But the reward is getting more than you ever dreamed of in the process. Do you see that? So what Jesus is saying here is the same thing is true of eternal life. This is eternal life. We were made for eternal life, guys. We were designed for life to the fullest, to experience and enjoy the good life in Jesus Christ. We were made for that by God himself as his image bearers. And so this potential for the good life is etched within us. All of the potential needed for it is like a divine secret inside of us. So we ache for it and we long for it and we chase happiness with every ounce of energy that we possess. But until we empty ourselves of ourselves, until we go back into the dirt from which we came, until we die to this fallen world, the potential for eternal life remains unrealized and unreleased. That's the paradox explained. And so Christ's call to die is actually the call to finally live. The sacrifice and the reward are the same thing. I love how Martin Luther once put it when he said, God creates out of nothing. Therefore, until a man is nothing, God can make nothing out of him. That's what the illustration of the grain of wheat is all about. Death is the necessary condition for the generation of life. I would dump this all out, but I don't have anything to dump it into. But imagine that what he's saying is you've got to empty yourself of yourself. That's what it means to hate this life. Not hate yourself, not hate the world. It's actually a Hebrew idiom, and it's contrasting extremes. What he's saying is you've got to empty yourself of all of you so that life can be produced in you. So now the big question is, how does this play out? How does laying down our lives actually lead us into the good life? Well, in this text, we see two main ways that this happens, and that's really what I want to show you in the time that we have left today. The first way this plays out is when we empty ourselves of ourself, we will be filled with the presence of Christ. Look back at verse 26. If anyone serves me, he must follow me. And where I am, there my servant will be also. Guys, Jesus is talking about a tangible experience of his presence. Where he is, there we will be also. And this is really important because the thing that we've seen over and over and over again in the Gospel of John, and again, if this is your first time, we're just going to catch you up real quick. Life to the fullest, Zoe, is essentially at its very core about being brought back into the presence of God. That's what the good life is, to be brought back into the presence of God. It's about going back to the beginning, where Adam and Eve had this unbroken fellowship with God. They walked with him and they talked with him, and it was this perfect relationship with their Creator. It's about going back to what they had then. Sin undone, the curse dismantled, Satan defeated, to have our sin replaced by his righteousness, to have our condemnation replaced by his affection, to have our punishment replaced by his inheritance. That is the good life. You know the one thing that's keeping us from that? You know the one thing that actually keeps us from living life to the fullest? Ourselves. That's the one thing that keeps us from happiness, is the thing that our culture says, just fill yourself up with. The one thing that keeps us from the presence of God, which is the good life, is our sin, our pride, our selfishness. The fact that we are so full of self-indulgence, self-expression, self-care, self-appreciation. Jesus says, if you want to get to the good life, you got to empty yourself of you. Stop serving you and start serving me. Stop bowing to all of those other kings, all those other gods, all of those other treasures, and bow to me, so that where I am, you can be also. Now, I want to stop here for a minute because I am 100% confident that many of you in this room right now, listening to me, and maybe watching on Facebook, we miss you, are not convinced that the presence of Christ is actually the end of all of your lifelong desires. And I'm not going to get a show of hands. I just know that that's where you are. How can a mystical, spiritual experience of someone that you can't see, you can't hear, and you can't touch satisfy all of the longings of your soul? If you've never asked that question, you're not asking the right questions. Maybe a better way to ask it would be, how do we know that laying down our lives so that we can have the presence of Christ will actually lead to our happiness? So here's what we have to understand about Jesus Christ. This is what I want you to see about Jesus. The philosophers, especially Plato, talked about three things that were really the things that would lead to happiness in the good life. It was whatever was good, true, and beautiful. They were the things that we should pursue. What I want you to see about Jesus is that everything in this world that is good, everything in this world that is true, everything in this world that is beautiful is a reflection of him. A better way to put it would be to say that everything in this world that is true and good and beautiful is a sign, ultimately pointing us to him. He didn't just create everything that's good, true, and beautiful. Guys, get this. He is their completion. He is their final destination. So whatever you love that is good is a shadow of the ultimate good, who is Christ. Whatever you love that is true is just a glimpse of the ultimate truth that is Christ. Whatever you love that is beautiful is a sign pointing you to the completion of that beauty, which is Christ. I love how the Apostle Paul demonstrated this in 2 Corinthians 4, and I'm going to read it to you. But before we read it, I want you to understand something about his audience. Hopefully you didn't see that, because it's going to spoil it. But I want you to understand something about his audience that will help you really get a glimpse of how he's painting Jesus in this passage. You see, there were three major cultures that dominated the biblical world: the Hebrew culture, the Greek culture, and the Roman culture. And every single one of these cultures had a different vision of the ultimate pursuit or the ultimate goal. And if they could attain that goal, if they could arrive at that destination, they would be good. They'd be living life to the fullest. The great apologist Ravi Zacharias, he's highlighted these different visions, and so I'm referencing him a lot in this. For the Hebrews, the ultimate goal or the ultimate good was light. It was light. They were always talking about light. So they would say in their Hebrew scriptures, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. The Lord is my light and my salvation. This is the light that brings light to every man. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. And so for the Hebrews, light was everything. It was the representation of God. It was the ultimate goal, to get out of darkness and into the light. Greatest pursuit. Now for the Greeks, the greatest pursuit of their entire life in the entire world was knowledge. The university, the scholar, they were essential. All of their different schools of philosophy dominated their culture. They weren't just interested in what was in front of them. They wanted to know what was behind everything that was in front of them, the essential nature and quality of things. And so knowledge was their ultimate goal. And then finally for the Romans, the ultimate goal, the ultimate pursuit, the ultimate good was glory. The glory of the Roman Empire was all that mattered to them. And so everything that they did was to enhance their own glory. New roads, new territories, new slaves, so that they could enhance their glory. So the greatest pursuit for the Hebrew was light. The greatest pursuit for the Greek was knowledge. The greatest pursuit for the Roman was glory. All of those are good things. All of those are true things. All of those are beautiful things, but all of them are incomplete. And so now look at how the Apostle Paul introduces Jesus in 2 Corinthians 4:6. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. He is the completion of your Hebrew vision, which is light, and your Greek vision, which is knowledge, and your Roman vision, which is glory. They are completed in Him. So what you're chasing is good, but it's incomplete. It's just a shadow. It's just a sign. It's pointing you to Christ. And if you possess Christ, you have the world. You have everything. His presence in our hearts satisfies the deepest longings of our souls, which is why we will never flourish and thrive and live life to the fullest if we do not empty ourselves so that we can be filled with His presence. How do we get there? The reward is the sacrifice. They are one and the same. If anyone serves me, he must follow me. He must follow in my footsteps. He must get on his cross so that where I am, there will my servant be also. And that leads to the second way that this plays out. When we empty ourselves of self, we don't just receive the presence of Christ, but we receive His sonship as well. We receive His sonship as well. Look at the end of verse 26. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. Guys, this is really important for us to stop and just pay attention to. See, God didn't send or just send Jesus into the world as a messenger with good news. He was a messenger with the best news in the entire world. He didn't just send Jesus into the world as a teacher with a really thought-provoking lesson, even though His lessons are still being taught 2,000 years later. He didn't even just send Jesus into the world as a rescuer on a cosmic mission, even though He was and He accomplished that mission. First and foremost, He sent Jesus into the world as a son with a perfect, holy, loving Father. Jesus was sent into the world as a son to show us how we would relate to God. This is vital if you want to understand what it means to live life to the fullest. How you relate to God is absolutely vital. Yes, He is King. Yes, He is sovereign. Yes, He is holy. Yes, He is Lord. But before all of that, God is Father. Jesus' mission, his message, were all wrapped up in His sonship. Guys, it's not just that we've been brought into His presence. It's not just that we've emptied ourselves of all of ourself and now He's with us and we're with Him. It's not just that we're in His presence as servants, even though service is involved. It's not just that we're there as saints or subjects or stewards. It is that we have been brought into His presence as sons and daughters. Jesus' sonship is now ours. When we serve the Son, his perfect and holy Father, who is now our perfect and holy Father, honors us. He delights in us. He blesses us as his children. Guys, I think to get the weight of this, we've got to go back to something that we had as kids. Something that every single one of us possessed as kids that we've kind of lost as we've gotten older, or we've distorted and we've misused a little bit. And it's this childlike delight and joy in the honor and praise of our parents. Just try to think back to when you were a kid. I know it's hard. I have kids now, so it's really easy for me to see this. Nicholas is a great example. Last week, he had his first soccer tryout. So he just turned 7, so he's trying out for the under-8 junior academy. He goes to this tryout, he goes to this evaluation. There's dozens and dozens of kids there. Does a great job, and he actually does so well that he gets called up to play for the under-9 youth academy team. So you can just imagine how proud I am as a dad, right? We decided not to put him into it because it's way too big of a commitment, and he's 7. But I'm still really proud of him. Excuse me. Fascinating thing to me about that tryout, though. He's always taking stuff in, and you're making observations and, trying to find the correlations to my own life and spirit, my relation to my father and everything. The fascinating thing about this tryout is that there are dozens and dozens of these little kids running around trying to do the best that they possibly can. And there are about half a dozen coaches evaluating them the whole time. And these coaches are professionals. They cost a lot of money, which is why we didn't put Nicholas in it, because it's way too expensive. But these are men who played soccer their entire lives at a high level, some of them at the highest level, professionally. And these 6 men are evaluating all of these little kids running around trying to see if they can cut it. They are the ones who decide who is in and who is out. So if these little boys should have been worried about impressing anyone, it should have been those 6 men. What was so fascinating to me, though, about this tryout is that they could not have cared less about those 6 men. It's almost like they weren't even there, except that they were shouting commands at them. On numerous occasions, every single one of those boys who had parents on the sidelines looked over at us, made eye contact with us, waved at us. We're doing little jigs and dances to try to get our attention just to see, are you watching me? Are you paying attention? Do you see me? As soon as it was over, and Nicholas comes up to me, the first words that came out of his mouth? Hey, Dad, did you see me? Did you see me take the ball from that guy? Did you see how hard I was running? Did you see me score that goal? Were you watching me? Why? Because children have this pure and innocent and heartfelt longing for the honor of their parents. This is something that we lose as we get older, or we distort as we get older. It turns into something that it shouldn't be. It turns into an idol. We become resentful, and on and on and on it goes. But as kids, it's pure. It's innocent. They're just created with this. Jesus said, I came into the world as a son of a father who loves to honor me. He loves to shower me with praise. In fact, he was doing it for all eternity before he created the world. He was blessing me through the Spirit. That's Ephesians 1. He loves to bless me with his affection and his approval. I am his son with whom he is well pleased. And I want you to have that as well. If you serve me, If you follow me, if you lay down your life, if you empty yourself of all of yourself so that you can be filled with my presence, my sonship is yours. And just as he honors me, he will honor you. He sees you, he's watching you, and he delights in you. It's shocking. I think most of the time when we think about how we relate to God, we think about our sin. And we should, because before Christ, that's all we could relate to him through, is we were condemned. We were dead in our trespasses and sin, Ephesians 2. We were children of wrath. We couldn't stand in his presence. But on the other side of the cross, do you think that that's still how we're supposed to relate to God? We no longer have a spirit of fear. We've been given a spirit of freedom, of sonship. So now we cry out, Abba, Father. So whereas before the cross, we only related to God through our sin, and he saw us as sinners, and we stood condemned. Now on this side of the cross, we enter into his throne room as sons and daughters. We literally have the access to crawl up in his lap and to be embraced in his loving and welcoming arms. He doesn't see us through our sin anymore. He sees us through his son. That is what sonship is. It is ours. We possess it. It's not just the presence of Christ and, oh no, I got to be careful because I sinned hundreds of times yesterday. It is the presence of Christ, and now my Father loves you and honors you. And so now all of those people you think you need to impress, all of the ones who decide who's in and who's out, all of the ones who decide who can cut it and who doesn't, all of those courtrooms of public opinion that you are trying to get a good verdict from fade into the background because you're perfect and you're holy and your glorious Father in heaven honors you. This is what it means to live life to the fullest. To be brought back into the presence of God and to be welcomed and loved and honored as his child. The sacrifice and the reward are the same thing. So if you want to know what it really means to be happy and content, and you want to know what it feels like to flourish and thrive, both now and for all eternity, empty yourself of yourself. Serve Christ. Follow in his footsteps. Get up on a cross. What a beautiful invitation, and die so that you might truly live.